My name is Anna, and I used to believe in the kind of love that survives hurricanes. The kind you see in old films where the woman sacrifices, the man returns, and the story ends in soft piano music and quiet promises. That fantasy lasted exactly 12 years, until the night of my anniversary, when my husband invited his secret family to our celebration. We lived in Manhattan, in a restored brownstone on 83rd Street, the kind with wrought iron balconies and climbing ivy that made tourists pause for pictures. It cost $3.2 million by the time we finished the renovations, and every dollar came from the life I built, my firm, my clients. My sleepless nights rewriting speeches for corrupt senators who'd never remember my name. James? He worked at a hedge fund in Brooklyn Heights. He liked to say we were a power couple. But what he really meant was, I make the money and he spends it like it's printed in our basement. For our 12th anniversary, I planned everything. I rented out a rooftop garden in Soho, had a custom floral arch draped with white orchids flown in from Brazil, and hired a private chef who trained under Alain Ducasse. The total cost? Just over $14,000, and I paid for every dime. I told myself it was worth it. 12 years, no kids by choice, and a marriage built on ambition, aesthetics, and shared secrets. Or so I thought. I wore a forest green satin dress. The same one James once told me reminded him of our trip to Denmark, his favorite trip, he'd claimed. It clung in all the right places, elegant but commanding. I remember standing by the bar, swirling a $300 glass of Bordeaux, looking around at friends, colleagues, old college friends. The violinist played Vivaldi. I should have been glowing. I should have felt celebrated. Instead, I saw her. She walked in like she owned the sky. Tall, willowy, with sleek black hair and skin so smooth it made you think of ice sculptures. Her name was Clarissa. I didn't know that yet. All I knew, in that moment, was that James's face changed when he saw her. Not surprise. Not panic, recognition, admiration, like she was the sun and we were all just orbiting. Then I saw the children. 2 of them, a boy and a girl. The boy had James's exact nose. And that smile? That smug, slightly crooked grin, I used to think was charming. It was staring back at me on an 8-year-old face. My chest tightened. My fingers gripped the stem of my glass like a weapon. James stood. "Everyone," he said, as if this was a casual announcement, "I want you to meet my other family." Silence. No one laughed. No one clapped. Then Clarissa raised a glass, my crystal goblet, part of the wedding set I'd hand-carried from London, and said, "Thank you, Anna, for paying our bills all these years." A few gasps. A stifled laugh from someone at the back who clearly had no idea what to do. And James? He smiled. Smiled like he'd won something. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything, even though every cell in my body wanted to lunge across the room and shatter that woman's perfect little face into pieces. Instead, I placed my wine glass gently on the marble counter, straightened my spine, and smiled. But not the kind of smile you wear at dinner parties. It was the kind you wear before the kill. I turned without a word and walked out. The city felt different under my heels, sharper, colder. The skyline looked jagged, like teeth ready to bite. The air tasted of betrayal. But beneath it all, something else rose up inside me. Clarity. I remembered every password James had ever used. I remembered the secret joint account we opened in year 3. I remembered the shell company I built for tax purposes, and how I'd never bothered removing his name from the paperwork. I remembered everything. James thought this was just a humiliation, a public wound I'd crawl away from. He underestimated me. You see, betrayal doesn't break me, it builds me. That night I didn't go home. I checked into the penthouse suite at the plaza. I left my dress on, ordered a whiskey neat, and opened my laptop. In less than 2 hours I had access to every financial document tied to our life. James hadn't changed a single password in years. The man could barely update his phone. He relied on me for everything, and that was going to cost him. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted ruin. I wanted to make him feel the cold weight of irrelevance. I wanted to rip the image of success from his hands and leave him holding scraps. I wanted to look him in the eye while he begged and smile the way he smiled at me, arrogant, cruel, careless. I made a list. A real, handwritten list in my journal titled, "The Gift List." It read, 1. Freeze joint accounts. 2. Transfer LLC assets. 3. Cancel house utilities. 4. Notify board of directors. 5. Dig into Clarissa's past. 6. And lastly, make them regret ever meeting me. By dawn, step 1 was already in motion. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I had something better than rest. Rage sharpened into purpose. That celebration was supposed to be the symbol of our strength. Instead, it became my origin story. And James? James gave me the greatest anniversary gift of all. A reason to burn the entire thing down. I didn't sleep that night, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. While James was likely spooning Clarissa in some overpriced condo I paid for, I was in the plaza's penthouse, sitting cross-legged on crisp linen sheets, laptop glowing against the New York skyline. The room was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the Cartier clock on the knitstand. I remember thinking, this is the sound of strategy, not sadness. The concierge had looked at me like I was something tragic. Black mascara streaked down my cheekbones, heels still on, lips stained from Bordeaux. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't broken. I was simply in my blueprint phase. War doesn't start with bombs. It starts with silence and planning. James always underestimated me. That was his fatal mistake. He thought I was just the woman who hosted brunches, paid property taxes, and sent polite emails. But behind every speech I ghostwrote for corrupt New York politicians was a woman who knew how to rewrite stories, and I was about to rewrite ours. I began with the money. There was an LLC registered in Brazil from our second year of marriage. It was supposed to be a retirement investment, something exotic and distant to make James feel powerful. He insisted on putting it in his name for liability protection, but I kept access quietly, legally, smartly. There was $920,000 sitting in that account as of last quarter. My first move? Transferring $30,000 to a dummy vendor account I'd named Garden Repairs. The name was boring, unassuming, and completely fake. Over the next 4 days, I moved the funds $9,000 here, $11,500 there, carefully, routed through shell accounts in the Caymans, and finally deposited in a personal trust under my name. By Friday, the LLC was a skeleton. And James? He still hadn't checked a single balance. After the money came the house. That brownstone on 83rd wasn't just real estate, it was history, image, legacy, but James had always left the logistics to me. He hated paperwork. Thought it was beneath him. So when I asked him to sign updated estate documents last winter amid a story I crafted about protecting my father's health, he didn't even read the forms. The one he signed transferred the deed of the brownstone into an irrevocable trust with me as sole executor. By Wednesday afternoon, I had filed the necessary change with the city register, hired a locksmith, and posted a security notice at the door. The doorman, Roman, a quiet man from Queens with sharp eyes, had been tipped $500 to make sure James didn't get in. He didn't ask why. Loyalty, like revenge, is better when it's paid for. James showed up 2 days later. He pounded on the iron door, shouting my name like it was supposed to scare me. I was inside, curled up on our Italian leather sectional with a bottle of wine and a copy of The Art of War. I didn't flinch. I let him shout for a minute, let the rage build like a fire in his throat. Then I unlocked the door slowly and stepped into the frame. He looked like hell. Hair a mess, shirt wrinkled, eyes twitching with fury. "You changed the locks on our house?" he spat. I sipped my wine. Correction, my house. "You stole from me," I laughed. Not a giggle, not a snide chuckle, a full laugh, the kind you reserve for a fool who's finally realized the stage he's on is burning. "I didn't steal a thing," I said. "I simply took back what I paid for. You were just borrowing it."
He started talking fast threats about lawyers, divorce proceedings, freezing accounts. He said my name like it was a curse.
But he didn't realize, by now every account tied to his name was already a ghost. The assets were mine, the property was mine, his reputation? Soon to be rubble. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder titled Clown Files. Inside were screenshots, hotel bookings, plane tickets, sex messages to Clarissa, even a voice note where he told her, "Anna's money is technically ours, right?" I had timestamped every file. Some of them dated back to our 10th anniversary, when I was in bed with pneumonia, and he was apparently at a conference. I turned the screen toward him, scrolling slowly. You really think a New York judge will side with a man who used his wife's money to keep his mistress and their kids in matching Burberry pajamas? I said.
He didn't have a response, just silence. His chest heaved, fists clenched, but his eyes.
His eyes had shrunk. He looked smaller now, not the polished hedge fund alpha, but a man whose empire had been built on someone else's spine. He dropped to sit on the stairs, those same stairs where we once toasted our first home. Now they were just cold marble beneath a coward. You won't get away with this, he said, his voice thin. I stepped forward, just close enough to make sure he saw the calm in my eyes. James, I said, I'm not getting away with anything. I'm walking away with everything. He left. Red-faced, hollow, angry, but he didn't slam the door. No man slams a door he no longer owns. I locked it behind him and turned back to the room. Everything was still, quiet, powerful. Then I picked up my phone and texted Clarissa. You really think I'd let you walk into my party and mock me in my dress? You don't know who I am yet. But you will, because revenge doesn't come with a bang. It comes in waves, and I was just getting started. I used to think women like Clarissa were born perfect, some breed of Manhattan goddess, dipped in wealth and entitlement, floating on platforms of Botox and soft lies. She was all cheekbones and cold perfume, the kind of woman who drank cucumber martinis and called herself a survivor of emotional labor. But the truth is simpler. Women like Clarissa are not born perfect. They are built on fraud, fantasy, and fear. And when you take a hammer to that foundation, they crumble like dust. I started with her image. She styled herself as a brand consultant, according to LinkedIn. A sleek little title attached to a long-dead boutique fashion house in Soho. The company had folded 3 years ago after a series of shady financial dealings. I confirmed that in an hour. The website was still up, barely a digital ghost with broken links and expired discount codes. But the IRS? The IRS loves a good resurrection story. I submitted an anonymous tip through their fraud hotline, a woman claiming current employment through a defunct business, collecting private client retainers under false pretenses and likely underreporting self-employment income. I even sent them screenshots of her supposed contracts and invoices she bragged about on Instagram. Nothing fancy, just enough to make the wolves sniff at her door. That was my opening act. Next, I dug into her past. It didn't take much. Clarissa wasn't careful. She changed her name when she moved to New York, but left fingerprints all over Miami. Her real name was Vanessa Clarice Morales, and back in Florida, she had a record long enough to make a judge sigh. 2 evictions, 1 skipped court hearing, $72,000 in unpaid credit card debt, and best of all, a marriage license to a bartender named Kyle Brennan, never annulled, never divorced. That meant her affair with James wasn't just immoral, it was illegal. Bigamy isn't a felony in New York unless you get caught. So I made sure she would. I printed everything. Court records, bank statements, old photos from her early modeling days, even a rental agreement showing she once lived above a pawn shop. I wrapped it all in a crisp manila folder and hand-delivered it to the address I knew she shared with James. No return address. Just a note inside, typed in clean black letters. Thought you should see how this chapter ends. A woman who cleans house properly. Then I turned to the thing she valued most, her image. Clarissa ran a blog called Chic Single Mama. It was one of those over-filtered lifestyle traps, full of pastel colors and lies about authenticity. She preached vulnerability, empowerment, and self-made motherhood, all while living in a condo paid for with my money and raising kids fathered by my husband. So I hacked it. Nothing obvious, no flames or crude jokes, just slow, surgical edits. I replaced her essays with screenshots, one by one. Text messages of her sexting James during my hospital stay. Hotel receipts from their wellness retreats. And the piece de resistance, a voice memo she accidentally left open on a shared Google Drive, where she mocked her own followers. They eat that empowerment crap up. Post a crying selfie and suddenly you're a feminist icon. I let the blog updates sit for 3 hours before I shared them. Not with everyone, just a few carefully chosen parenting forums. women-led entrepreneurs groups, and one New York Times freelancer I knew personally. She didn't even need a pitch. The screenshots spoke for themselves. Within 2 days, Clarissa's blog was flagged for content violations. Her Instagram comments turned to poison. Brands started pulling their affiliate links. Her PayPal froze. Her public image shattered. I watched it all unfold from a wine bar in the West Village. Sat at the corner table, phone in hand, watching her followers fall away like rotten fruit. The bartender asked me if I was celebrating something. I smiled and said, just closure. But Clarissa didn't go quietly. She texted me 6 times. First rage, then desperation, then silence. You've made your point. You're hurting everyone for what? A man who lied to both of us? Please, Anna, stop. I didn't respond. Because she still didn't understand. This wasn't about James anymore. This was about erasure, what she tried to do to me, in plain daylight, standing at my anniversary party, wearing my perfume, drinking from my wedding crystal, while thanking me for funding their lie. This was about making her feel what I felt. Powerless, exposed, discarded. She posted a final goodbye message 2 days later. A soft pink graphic that said, taking a break from social. Time to heal. But we both knew it wasn't healing. It was exile. And James? He was unraveling like cheap thread. Without my income and Clarissa's flattery, he had nothing to keep him afloat. His firm placed him on administrative leave pending an internal audit, another little surprise I arranged by leaking anonymous documents about expense misuse. Did I forge a few lines? Maybe, but when you build your marriage on deceit, forgery is barely a crime, it's a correction. He called once. I didn't answer. I imagined him in that empty condo, pacing through silence, wondering how his world evaporated in under 2 weeks. Wondering how the woman he thought was weak became the very storm that drowned him. I sipped wine that night on the rooftop of my brownstone still mine, fully mine, and looked out at the city. Below me, Manhattan pulsed like a living organism, chaotic and beautiful. They thought they could replace me. They thought I would break, but I wasn't made of glass. I was made of fire. And Clarissa? Clarissa learned that some women don't just survive betrayal, we feed on it. The morning I left New York, the sky was steel gray, low clouds pressing over the skyline like judgment. It was as if the city knew something had ended. Or maybe it was just me. I stood barefoot on the balcony of my brownstone, yes, still mine, and drank espresso as bitter as truth. No sugar, no milk. I liked it that way now. It reminded me of everything that had happened. And everything I had taken back. The air smelled like rain and concrete. Below me, traffic hummed like a distant war. I had nothing left to burn here. Only ashes. Only lessons. James thought he could survive it. That was the funniest part. After Clarissa vanished from social media, imploded, really, he tried to rebuild. I watched from a distance as he stood behind podiums and gave weak, stuttering speeches about learning from failure and regaining integrity. He said words like growth and resilience as if they meant something. But beneath that suit, James was a ghost in a body he didn't own anymore. He didn't know it, but I'd written his ending too. While he stood on that Midtown stage, smiling at investors with hollow eyes, a file landed in the legal department of his firm. It arrived anonymously. Thick, detailed, and time-stamped. It included every manipulated expense report, every misused company card, and every lie he sold as strategy. Romantic weekend trips labeled as client acquisition. A $14,000 charge for educational development that turned out to be Clarissa's nose job in Beverly Hills. Photos, emails, receipts, neatly packaged. They didn't fire him publicly. That would have been mercy. No, they let him go quietly. He became one of those men who say things like, I'm between opportunities. He sold his Tesla, moved into a condo in Long Island City. And I heard through the grapevine that he was driving Uber under an alias to cover rent. Aggression isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silence, loneliness, irrelevance. Clarissa was worse off. No one had heard from her since her blog collapsed under the weight of her own hypocrisy. She tried to start over in London under a new name, Clara Moore. It even sounded like a woman running from something. What she didn't know was that a dear friend of mine, Isabel, ran a PR firm in Mayfair. Clarissa applied for a junior branding position. Pathetic, really. A demotion from queen of self-righteous lies to someone who fetches coffee. Her resume ended on Isabel's desk the same day I visited for wine. Clara Moore? Isabel said, reading aloud. Sounds suspiciously like someone who fakes empowerment for likes. I didn't even have to say her real name. Isabel laughed, closed the file, and tossed it into the bin. She's not getting near anything we built, she said. And just like that, Clarissa's rebirth was aborted before it even took its first breath. As for me, I was reborn. Not as the woman they tried to ruin, but as the woman they accidentally unleashed. I had already transferred the LLC funds into a new shell company registered in the Caymans clean, untouchable. I moved $1.1 million through staggered offshore accounts, just enough to buy into a boutique vineyard in Sonoma. It was owned by Isabel, yes, that Isabel and another woman named Catherine, who had divorced a Manhattan real estate tycoon and walked away with cash, silence, and spite. We made a perfect trio, sharp, ruthless, refined. The vineyard was gorgeous rows of Pinot Noir grapes rolling down soft hills like a silk dress. We called it Second Harvest. I split my time between Napa and New York now. The brownstone is still mine. I lease it out to finance execs from Denmark. Actually, how poetic. One of them paid $12,000 for a single month last fall. I left a printed copy of Clarissa's blog screenshots locked in a drawer of the master bedroom closet, just a little relic. A reminder that sometimes victory doesn't need to scream. Sometimes it just waits quietly in the walls. And the best part? No one knows what happened, not really. To the world, James and Clarissa simply drifted out of relevance. A breakup, a disappearance, a career stumble. But behind it all, every fall, every loss, every humiliation was me. I walk the vineyard barefoot now, sun on my face, morning breeze in my hair. I plant things that grow, not lies, not illusions. But real things, earth and vine and legacy. And sometimes when the light hits just right, I think back to that rooftop celebration. The night James raised his glass and Clarissa thanked me for paying their bills. The moment I stood still, smiling at the fire already building in my chest. People say revenge is poison. That it corrodes you. But they're wrong. Revenge, when done right, refines you. It distills you into something stronger, cleaner, sharper. I didn't just get revenge. I built an empire from the rubble. And every time someone pours a glass of Second Harvest, they're drinking the story of what happens when you try to destroy a woman like me. A woman who doesn't just survive betrayal. She profits from it.